coming up.
Minister Boissonnault contends that he is not the Randy involved in these text messages. Have you reviewed the allegations that were reported in the media this morning?
Why is a numbered company obscuring official ownership any more than a non-numbered company? I'm sorry, I don't get.
Well, because, for instance, if there's a numbered company operating as the Nevis Group, and the Nevis Group is the one who is listed as the contractors, but on the disclosures it only shows the numbered company, then an average person would assume objectively that they couldn't make the connection between the numbered company and the operating company, the new named operating company.
It seems to me that in this question about who is Randy, if the principals involved in this company and they exchange accordingly, a thought that they were in fact referring to a minister of the Crown, even if that minister wasn't involved in that, and there was benefit derived from that, is there some ethical challenges that you would have with that?
So I only have a few seconds left, so I'm going to make a personal plea to the members of the Conservative Party to not put on social media
You're out of time, Ms.
to spam my office because I moved to adjourn debate. It is a personal plea to my colleagues.
You're out of time, Ms. Damoff. Thank you.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
The panel is from the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner. I would like to welcome the Commissioner, Conrad von Fichtenstein, and then the Director of Advisory and Compliance, Lynn Robinson-Dalpé.
Mr. Robinson-Dalpé and I are here to answer any question you may have regarding the compliance process of the work and how we handled the file of Mr. Boissonnault. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. We're going to start with our first round. And just for the benefit of committee, I did say I was going to leave a little bit of time at the end to discuss the question that was brought up at the beginning of the meeting by Mr. Baines. I am going to do that. Give us enough time to discuss it. Mr. Barrett, 6 minutes. Go ahead.
This morning there were revelations in global news that Minister Randy Boissonnault may have been party to what's been described by some as wire fraud to the tune of $500,000 as it relates to his business partner, Mr. Stephen Anderson. So there were text messages that were included in the media reports that detail someone named Randy who's not pleased with the delay of this $500,000 wire transfer with a company out of California. And then Randy, in the text messages, demands a partner call with Stephen Anderson. So Minister Randy Boissonnault has said today that he owns a company that owns, that he wholly owns a company that owns 50% of GHI, and Mr. Anderson, to his knowledge, owns the other half. Minister Boissonnault contends that he is not the Randy involved in these text messages. Having made a pronouncement following a complaint that you weren't going to pursue an investigation, does the emergence of new information generally, and does the information in this article today, if you've read it, give rise to a re-examination of your decision, and finally, have you reviewed the allegations that were reported in the media this morning?
Mr. Barrett, like you, I read the story this morning for the very first time. It's complete news to me. Never knew anything about it. It obviously raises some serious implications if the story is true. You heard what the minister said. The ruling that we made was based on the information that he disclosed to us, and he disclosed to us with regard to GHI only one thing, that he owned 50% through his numbered company. Clearly, we will look into this, and if our looking into it shows that there's more to it, there is substance to it, there may be contraventions of either the Act or probably the Act, then of course we will have to look, and I have the capacity to self-initiate another inquiry and look into it. At this point in time, I am really caught by surprise. I didn't know about it until I read it this morning. I don't know this thing. I heard the minister's testimony. I think it would be absolutely irresponsible to make a premature decision as to what we're going to do and how. All I can do is tell you that we will look into it.
Right. I think that's entirely fair, sir. It was new information. Just like you, we prepare for committee based on the information that we have, and in the 2 hours in advance to find that information or those allegations. It is it creates a challenging environment. So you expressed that it was that the allegations in it were serious and new. So is it correct to understand that that Minister Boissonnault didn't previously disclose that circumstance to you, and that you will be investigating these new allegations, and if necessary, you would self-initiate an investigation?
As I said in my opening statement, we made our ruling on the basis of the information disclosed to us. He disclosed to us that he owned 50% indirect of GHI through his numbered company. That's all we know about GHI. All of this now is what GSI did, was involved, who ran actually it, who this Randy is that is being mentioned, did he actually do, etc. All of this is news, and as I said, all I can do is say we will look into it. I cannot make a decision on any of that because I really have nothing more than the report in which you have two from Global News and the testimony that you heard this morning from the minister.
Yep, that's. I appreciate that response. I want to ask a quick question on another subject, if I may. The Auditor General released a report this morning, and I'm not sure if your office gets those as well. And in it, there were 90 instances of undisclosed, and I think 96 instances of disclosed conflicts of interest, but the 90 instances of undisclosed conflicts of interest in matters of $76 million being handed out by individuals who were appointed by the NDP Liberal government. Are you aware of this finding by the Auditor General?
No, of course not. She makes her finding public today. We don't have, she is under confidentiality provisions and obligations the same as I. Having read that, etc., as you know, I undertook to give a ruling on the conflict of interest of Madame Verschuren and Mr. Winmet before August 1st, and I will do so. And clearly we will deal with conflict of interest there. I don't know what these conflict of interests are that she refers to. I haven't read the report either. Just like you this morning, it came out, and I managed to read the executive summary. So, I really don't want to speak any further about it because maybe there's something in the report that will illuminate some of these points. It's very troubling to hear that there has been that much conflict of interest, and obviously that's an area that concerns us primarily. And while she is more or less, as the Auditor General, she's looking at the whole operations,
Thank you, Commissioner.
the effect, the value for money, etc. So there's a different focus that she has than we have.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Mr. Commissioner.
Do you remember anything momentous that happened on September the 8th, 2022, Commissioner?
No. So, I'm sorry.
Well, no, it was striking to me because I was reading this text that was ostensibly sent on September the 8th, 2022 from somebody named Randy. It's 1314 MST and 1514 EST. We all know the rest of the text. And something struck me that date was very familiar. And I looked back and I remembered that was the date that Queen Elizabeth II died. And then I remembered that was the date that there was a cabinet retreat in Vancouver because all of the members of cabinet were wondering what they could wear, whether they had black or not in their wardrobes. And so one of the things that everybody's pointing out and was earlier pointing out in this text that they were talking about Eastern Standard Time, but Mr. Boissonnault on September the 8th, 2022 was actually at a cabinet retreat in Vancouver on Pacific Standard Time. and busy in a cabinet retreat, which would lead me to believe that the idea that he was leaving a cabinet retreat to deal with an issue like this strikes me as even more fanciful. Commissioner, you would acknowledge, I'm sure, that this is something that, as you said, you're going to look into, but the fact that there's a text from somebody ostensibly named Randy doesn't immediately lead you to a conclusion that this Randy is Minister Boissonnault, does it?
I deal with facts, not with allegations or assumptions or conjectures, etc. And I don't know who the author of this article is, what knowledge she has of the fact, etc. When we look into it, we will state the facts as we find them.
Mr. Commissioner, you may have, first of all, I'll just ask, I don't want to lead. Were you able to watch the last round of questioning?
Yes.
With Mr. Boissonnault here?
Yes, I was.
Would you recall my exchange with him about listing of companies, the numbered company versus the operating as?
Yes. You asked him to do that, and I understand he undertook to furnish such a list.
Well, we hope he will. My question through to you is that when disclosures are made, what are the requirements? If a company is a numbered company, is it required to disclose who it's operating as in order to provide public disclosure?
Well, the disclosure is very simple. You can own a company. You can have an interest in it. That's no problem. You can't run a company if you are elected and you're appointed minister. Here,
but the purpose of the disclosures, if I could, sir, is to identify to the public who the beneficial owners are of companies. It is my suggestion that numbered companies that do not actually list who they're operating as obscures the beneficial ownership. Would it not?
Why is a numbered company obscuring official ownership any more than a non-numbered company? I'm sorry, I don't get the point.
Because, for instance, if there's a numbered company operating as the Nevis Group, and the Nevis Group is the one who's listed as the contractors, but on the disclosures it only shows the numbered company, then an average person would assume objectively that they couldn't make the connection between the numbered company and the operating company, the new named operating company.
The disclosure is not made for the average person, first of all. It's made for the office, right? And only the portions that have to be disclosed and put on the public record, we put on the public record. Obviously, if you have a numbered company which also operates under a name, it would be appropriate to disclose both. If you don't do that, as I mentioned before, each person who's appointed gets a counselor to advise him on, and if the councillor would certainly ask you, say, you own 3509 Limited. Does this company have operate under a trading name or not? And that would be disclosed.
Is that part of the standard questions that advisors would provide to cabinet ministers?
I would hope so. I can't I have 53 people working for me. I don't know whether they all do that, but they should. I mean, clearly.
Could you please report back to this committee, sir, about what questions are required for disclosure for cabinet ministers? Because for me, I'll state to you, it is a material non-disclosure to omit who your operating name is when it comes to procurement. Now, the crux of a conflict of interest, as we've talked many times, sir, you and I, about not just the actual conflict, but the perceived conflict. And when there are instances where there's reporting that demonstrates that there's a minister, a cabinet minister, who is receiving contracts through a numbered company in a deferred payment arrangement, when the actual procurement happens with an operating name other than the numbered company, to me, sir, that would erode and undermine the public trust when it comes to open and transparent procurement practices related to companies connected to ministers.
Well, first of all, Lynn, do you want to answer his questions regarding what questions councillors put regarding numbered companies?
So essentially, when the office is informed of a private company or any other company, the requirement to disclose either the numbered company or the registered company name or the corporation's legal name, its trade name, it doesn't matter right now at this present time whether they report one, both, or not, or just strictly the numbered company. So in those cases, we will go back to the minister or reporting public office holder, asking whether or not there is an operating name, if the company is operating under a legal name or another name. And if we do have that name, then we will make it public. But there is no requirement to disclose either the numbered company or the operating company's name. One or the other is perfectly acceptable under the Act and under the Code as well.
Acceptable under the Act and the Code, but I think it's fair to say in this instance it presents a bit of a problem in terms of what the public confidence is relating to the ability to track procurement contracts that are material in nature. We're talking, big contracts here. And so I would ask you, is it a recommendation that perhaps this committee recommend that all disclosures of numbered companies include the operating and trade names to provide greater transparency and accountability to the public and your office, quite frankly, because as was identified, you can only investigate what is submitted to you. So if you're submitted a numbered company and you're looking for contradictions or conflicts within the Act and you don't know what the operating name is, would that not provide a significant investigative gap between your ability to confirm or perhaps investigate any potential conflicts?
Mr. Green, I set the rules for what the councillors ask, and we can really clearly establish that where the numbered companies involved, there has to be a follow-up question as to whether it has a trade name or not, and if so, that has to be disclosed. I mean, we're not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to help anybody to hide anything. So that's something that we can.
Just to be clear, that's not my assertion. I'm not suggesting you.
No. I understand, but I just wanted you to understand that
end of the
we're talking about internal procedures here. It's something very easily can be achieved.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Green. That concludes our first round. We're going to go to 5-minute rounds. I'm going to start with Mr. Kurek. Go ahead.
One of the challenges I think we have here is that there's questions about who this Randy is. You've mentioned those questions. I know that was certainly the conclusion of the last round. That is still an outstanding question. I would just ask, though, that it seems to me that in this question about who is Randy, if the principals involved in this company and they exchange accordingly, a thought that they were in fact referring to a minister of the Crown, even if that minister wasn't involved in that, and there was benefit derived from that, is there some ethical challenges that you would have with that?
The task of the office is to ensure there's no conflict of interest and to avoid help people avoid conflict of interest. In the situation that you mentioned, the question is there a conflict of interest here somewhere? Is there this exchange using the name of Randy? Now, does that by itself create a conflict of interest? No. If the Randy is a minister and he is actually involved in running a company, then of course it's a totally different issue.
And if he benefited from the perception that he was the one that was passing along that message, would that constitute a conflict?
It's with all of these hypotheticals, it depends very much on the facts, and without having the total facts, I can't answer your question.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that emphasizes the fact that we need all the facts involved here because there are many outstanding questions. Just curious, Commissioner, did you have a chance to refer or your office review the deferred compensation agreement that Minister Boissonnault received as a result of work that he didn't do well as a minister? Did your office have a chance to review that?
I don't think it was a deferred compensation. It was an amount of service that he rendered for which he had not been paid. Did we actually, Lynn, do you know the details of this?
I can only confirm that we saw the information of what is owed from the numbered from Navis to the numbered company, but we did not review an agreement per se.
Okay, I appreciate that. Well, look, thank you, Commissioner, and I know you're always willing to come before this committee, and I do appreciate that because it's appreciated. And as we get more facts, I know that you and your office will be hard at work looking at that information. But because, Mr. Chair, it's clear that there is some outstanding information that is required in order for us to be able to effectively evaluate this, whether it's the question about who is this Randy, or whether it's the whole series of challenges associated with what we've been, this committee has agreed to study here today. I would move a motion, and I hope that there would be support for what even the Liberals have suggested that we need, and that is to find out the facts. So, Mr. Chair, I hope that we can find agreement amongst this committee for the following motion. That in light of today's media reports and Minister Randy Boissonnault's testimony, the committee call on Stephen Anderson, Kristen Poon, and representatives of the Gowrie Group to appear before the committee individually and testify forthwith for no less than 1 hour each on or before June 20th, and the committee seek additional resources to facilitate these meetings if needed. And then, Chair, I would just make a brief comment on the motion.
Just let me just stop you there. Have you circulated that motion to the clerk, Mr. Kurek?
It's on its way.
Okay. So the motion is in order, and I'll give you the floor for some brief comments. I'm going to ask the clerk to circulate that as soon as she gets it. Go ahead, Mr. Kurek.
Thanks very much, Chair, and I hope that there's agreement, because certainly what the Liberals have suggested, while making some pretty outlandish accusations about, and quite frankly, the minister's conduct was, I've never seen a minister be so partisan before a committee than what Minister Boissonnault was this morning. And certainly there's concern about that, but you'll note in this motion, Chair, that it is, we are not calling back the minister. We want to get the facts. We want to ensure that Canadians can find out exactly what happened. So certainly if there is further information that requires the minister to be recalled, I would hope that we could find agreement amongst the committee. That this is simply to further ensure that Canadians are in fact getting the answers that are deserved when it comes to this matter. And I know Mr. Green as well had mentioned that there's some follow-up needed, and I know that that the Commissioner is always very willing to work with this committee. So with that, Chair, I would simply conclude my remarks by hoping that all members of this committee would support the simple request to get to the bottom of the very clear and outstanding questions that come about as a result of the discussion that we've had here.
The motion is in English only, so I am going to suspend for a few minutes while we're able to distribute that dans les deux langues officielles, Monsieur Fortin.
In both official languages. We're going to suspend.
Having given time to look at the motion, when we left, the motion had been moved by Mr. Carrick. Everybody has the motion at this point. We are resuming debate on the motion. I have Mr. Green, followed by Ms. Damoff. Mr. Green, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And you'll note in the past, I've, as an opposition member of this committee, supported deeper dives into government dealings. I certainly support a greater inspection into what's happened here and a better understanding, and a request for having these witnesses, to me, make sense. But what I will tell you is one of the biggest frustrations I've had with this committee is when, and it's happened in the past, where you yourself, sir, have booked meetings without consulting the other parties, and I would reference the Bloc and the NDP or even the Liberal side when it comes to the committee work. And so while I'm supportive of this motion, what I'm not supportive of is the caveat that says that the committee seek additional resources to facilitate these meetings if necessary. To me, having learned from past mistakes, I'm going to go on the record and say I am no longer in support of a committee structure that allows a chair or the official opposition to direct the course of our work without consultations of the other parties. So for that reason, I'm going to put an amendment on this, and I'm going to move that we strike after it says forthwith and no less than. We strike from there forward, and we put in for 1 2-hour regularly scheduled meeting. For 1 2-hour regular scheduled meeting. And the reason why I do that is because I think that we can have all of the witnesses arrive, provide testimony with 5-minute openings, have the ability to question and examine and cross-examine, and only use one regularly scheduled meeting. So we're not in a scenario where you all are booking meetings without consulting the other parties, kind of at your convenience and your will. So that is the amendment that I put. I'm in support of pursuing this, but I'm not going to just give you the ability to do it kind of at your own leisure or prioritization.
All right. Thank you for that, Mr. Green. So just so that I'm clear, your move test for 1 2-hour regularly scheduled meeting, and I assume that you are keeping before June 20th, correct?
I mean,
I
I think, Mr. Chair, what needs to happen at this committee is we need to have a subcommittee that plans work in accordance with the courtesy of including the other parties on the work schedule. And so if we have a subcommittee that plans the work and this is prioritized by way of a regular motion that is directed by committee, then yes, it would be before that. But what I do not want to do is give you the ability to determine when that's going to be without consultation to us. I would state, the obvious, which is that we're 25 members in our caucus without the infinite resources that both the government and the official opposition have. So we have to take our scheduling and our timing and our staffing into account when we make commitments for additional work. And this notion that when we don't concede to the whim of you as the chair, that we're somehow complicit in the cover-up is a cockamamie way of impugning what our work is here as New Democrats. And we even heard it today with these ridiculous references of an NDP Liberal government. I'm not on for that. But what I am on for is holding this government accountable. And what I am on for is using the traditional courtesy of our committee to have a planning committee that allows the committee to direct the work and not just the Conservative Party or you, sir, as chair.
Thank you. So we do have an amendment. On the amendment, any discussion on the amendment? Go ahead, Ms. Damoff.
Thank you, Chair.
On the amendment.
Yes, I know. I move to adjourn debate.
Okay. So we have a motion to adjourn debate on the motion amended by, or the proposed amendment by Mr. Green. So we're going to go to recorded vote. Madam Clerk, on the motion by Ms. Damoff to adjourn debate. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Baines.
Yes.
Ms. Damoff.
Yes.
Mr. Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Longfield.
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon.
Yes.
Mr. Brett.
No.
Mr. Brock.
No.
Mr. Couric.
No.
Monsieur Fortin.
Oui.
Mr. Green.
No.
Yeas 6 pour 6, nays 4 contre 4.
Okay, so the motion carries to adjourn debate, so we are adjourning debate. We're returning to our next line of questioning. Mr. Couric, your time was concluded.
Commissioner, I wonder if you could talk just briefly about how more rigorous the requirements are for ministers and parliamentary secretaries, not just on sponsored travel, but the actual form itself.
Okay, I think the expert on the form sits beside me, so Lynn.
So essentially, I would say the forms are pretty much identical between the MP code and the Act. Why? Because we ask for information about assets, liabilities, investments, companies, businesses. We ask about outside activities under both regimes. However, as the Commissioner explained, there are more stringent rules with regards to measures that reporting public office holders, including ministers, will have to abide by versus a member of Parliament.
So things like not holding, not owning stocks. You can own mutual funds. Not having, you can't be actively involved in a company. You can still be part owner, but you have to put it in a blind trust. Correct?
Correct.
So I only have a few seconds left, so I'm going to make a personal plea to the members of the Conservative Party to not put on social media
You're out of time, Ms.
to spam my office because I moved to adjourn debate. It is a personal plea to my colleagues.
You're out of time, Ms. Damo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Commissioner, pursuant to subsection 27(1) of the Conflict of Interest Act, public office holders must divest each of their controlled assets within 120 days after the day on which they were appointed as a public office holder. What does your office do to ensure that this divestment has taken place?
Well, we notify, we are in contact with the registered public office holder and saying, you know, here was following, let's assume if we had identified certain issue like that, these things have to be put in blind trust. So we give them the information, and we will tell them, we will pay for the lawyer, we will pay for the blind trust, but you have to, up to this day, to do it. And then if we do not get a response within a reasonable time, we will say, look, you're already in day whatever X, and there's only this much time to, so get on with it, get it done, etc. We remind them, we push them slightly, and you know, everybody's interested in complying. Nobody wants to be offside the requirement of the Commissioner.
If I could, what about the 120 days during which a public office holder is still in possession of the controlled assets? Do public office holders have to take any temporary measures to avoid conflicts of interest during that period?
Well, look, if they are controlled assets and you have to dispose of them and or put them in a blind trust, then obviously during that period of time you don't deal with them. I mean, it goes without saying. You have been appointed. We've identified these things. We say these are controlled assets that you are not entitled to hold. Get rid of them or put them in a blind trust. You're doing it. Then in the end, if during that period of time clear, you would be acting with them, you would be acting essentially in bad faith. And
just for the purpose of my very short time, it's your testimony here today that the moment somebody is appointed as a public office holder, at that moment, they then cease to be able to have any contact or control, despite the fact that there's a 120-day window.
No, that's not what I said at all. What I said is you have been appointed, we deal with you, we identify, you do your disclosure, and we identify certain assets that you are not allowed to hold. So you have then the choice of selling them or put them in a blind trust. The moment we tell you that, from that moment on, I don't think you can deal with them, because it has now been cleared. You know they can't hold with this and you can't deal with them. You have up to the end of the 120 days to either get rid of them or put them in a blind trust, yet you're certainly not dealing with them in the meantime.
So if there was a deal made during that time, that would be in contravention?
Very quick response.
It has never happened, and I don't expect it to happen, because, you know, why would you do that? You have just been told by my office, these are things you shouldn't own, get rid of them, or put them in blind trust. If you're then dealing with them, surely you're not acting in good faith.
I would like to proceed with the consideration of the draft report. However, our last two meetings where we attempted to do that was unsuccessful. If the committee is going to be dealing with committee business, I would like to deal with the business that Mr. Kirk put forward today, and debate was adjourned on it, and I think that there is interest from members to consider that matter as well. So I So if we're just going to be looking at business, what committee business we can be seized with, I think, based on the bombshells that dropped today, I'd be very interested in pursuing debate of Mr. Kirk's.
Okay, so I'm seeking guidance. I'm going to ask for quick interventions here because we do have 1:30 hard stop. Mr. Fisher and then Mr. Brock.
Thank you very much, and I certainly don't want to speak for Mr. Baines, but it was debated at length, mostly by the Conservatives. I'm sure that we could deal with it in 10 minutes, bring it to a vote, complete debate, and bring it to a vote, and then we could get it before the House pretty darn quickly.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brock?
Thank you. On the issue of committee business, I don't want the committee to lose sight of the fact that we still need to have a discussion on what to do with the RCMP documents and the documents received from Mr. Warnock. That's been on our agenda for a couple of weeks now, and I'd like to get to that.
Okay. All right. I appreciate the feedback. I'm going to take it back with the clerk. We're going to provide a notice of meeting probably by the end of today. So I'm just going to seek some guidance from the clerk, okay? That's all that I have for today. I want to wish everybody a great day. The meeting is adjourned.